What is up, all you beautiful people? It is I, AkemiTCG, back with the brand new video. The meta right now is nuts for the December 2020 format. Everybody's running around with virtual worlds, and it's a relatively cheap deck that you can buy and you can play for yourself. So how do you counter these decks? How do you counter the top decks of this current meta? I've come up with a list of 5, and that's right, 5 anti-meta cards you should be using in your decks in no particular order to fight this meta and to crush the meta. Hope you all enjoy. We are back here officially in the den after the longest time. This format is riddled with virtual world players because the deck's very cheap, extremely cheap, budget friendly, and VFD, if you guys don't know what VFD is this card. VFD, or True King of All Calamities, is a showstopper. In this current format, if you do not have outs to virtual worlds, ways to beat the deck, ways to beat this card somewhere in your main deck, or at least a good amount in your side deck, you are gonna have a rough time in this format. Unless you're playing like a trap heavy control deck, then that's a different thing. But if you're playing combo, if you're playing something with a lot of monster effects, this is going to be a huge pain in anybody's rear. That, and also Dinos, Zeus with Negalo Zeus. I'm just thinking that those top 3, in my opinion, are straight off my head. And then also Daytron is coming out very soon. I haven't done research on that yet. But, however, here's the top 5 cards I believe that you should be looking at, or at least running in some way, shape, or form to fight against the meta. And the first card is going to be Artifact, not Artifact Scythe, Artifact Lancea. Why do I say Lancea? Okay, if you don't know what Lancea does, you set this card to your hand as a spell, trap zone as a spell, and during your opponent's turn, if the set card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon it. Also, during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you contribute this card from your hand or face up on the field, okay? The key word here is you contribute this card from your hand. You never have to set it in your first place, so it's considered a hand trap. During your opponent's turn, neither player can banish cards for the rest of this turn. It doesn't say until the end phase. It says for the rest of the turn, neither player can banish. Alright, think about what this does to Dinos, okay? So let's say they use Oviraptor and they drop Miscellaneous Source, then you chain Lancea. They cannot resolve Miscellaneous Source, and also, even if they have double Evil Pill in the hand, they cannot use it. Because double Evil's cost, that cost is you have to banish 2 cards from your graveyard in order to use this, or from the hand I believe, in order to summon Ultimate Conductor Tyranno from the deck. So this card does slow down the deck considerably, and I'm more concerned about Virtual World, where they're gonna send their spell card into the graveyard, right? You're gonna pitch Lancea, and they cannot banish their spell card to get a search. And usually the search tends to be Lulu, and if you can stop that play, their turn just kind of stops. So I highly recommend maining this. The only caveat, the only issue is this does nothing to a lot of decks. It does nothing to a lot of road decks, and it does nothing to Zodiacs, which are very prevalent at the moment too. So please be careful of that. Please be mindful of that. Obviously, if you want to main deck it because you know your locals has way too many virtual world players, or you're worried that you're going to play against virtual world players, then definitely main deck it. And then if it doesn't work out for that particular matchup, just side it out. It's completely fine. And going hand in hand with Artifact Lancea is the next card, Dimensional Shifter or Dimension Shifter. I was confused too. Is he Dimensional or Dimension? Dimension Shifter. This guy, hand to the sky, ending so many turns, ending so many games. Dimension Shifter pretty much hurts literally any deck, because you just have to discard this card from your hand to the graveyard, send it from the hand to the graveyard, until the end of the next turn. Any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. The only big caveat is you have to have 0 cards in the graveyard. You have to have nothing in the graveyard. So it's very good for Madolce, really good for Zodiacs, because usually you just summon Dryden and you pass if you're going first, and then on your opponent's turn you either drop D-Shifter, or on your turn you drop D-Shifter. So on your following turn that you have next, you're unaffected by D-Shifter. That's pretty much the correct way to go about it. I mean, it's just a really good card. It shuts down pretty much almost every single deck in the game besides probably Metaphys and Thunder Dragon. But however, the big drawback is you have to have no cards in your graveyard. So hypothetically, it's only really good if you're opening first, or if your opponent just opens up Macrocosmos and your cards are going to be banished anyways. But in that case, this card doesn't even matter at that point. That's why I find Lancea a little bit more flexible, but Shifter hurts a lot more decks than Lancea. But also keep in mind that Shifter will hurt your own deck if you have no way to play around your own Shifter, because it says until the end of the next turn. So if you drop during your opponent's turn, you have to deal with the Shifter lock yourself on your turn as well. Please keep that in mind. But nonetheless, really good card, especially in Zeus. They main deck that card, so it's busted. It's busted. The next card is going to be Forbidden Chalice. I know a lot more people, or a lot less people are playing Imperm now. I mean, hypothetically, Imperm is better, but Chalice has the extra 400 attack buff, and a lot of people are preferring Chalice over Imperm just because Virtual World, Imperm doesn't really do anything to them, or very, very little. I mean, I have at times I've Imperm somebody's Croco because I didn't want them to just draw 2 cards for no reason, but other than that, Imperm doesn't really have that much application. And the idea is, sometimes your opponent waits until you summon a monster before they use True King of all Calamities effects, so it can't get Gamma and it can't get Imperm. But Chalice just plays right around that, because all you have to do is target a face-up monster in the field until the end of the turn. That target gains 400 attack, but its effects are negated. So most of the time, people are going to be playing True King of all Calamities in during the standby phase, so they don't get 3 tactical talented. You just Chalice them, chain Chalice, or doesn't matter when they activate its effect, just chain Chalice. And this is pretty much a really good version of Effect Failure, just a pseudo version of it that you can use at any point in time. Only problem is, again, it's not really a hand trap, it's just kind of like just more utility. And also it can come in clutch too. The 400 attack, sometimes that comes in clutch. Just letting you know, that comes in clutch. Really good against Negalo Zeus as well, so keep an eye out for that. The next card, and in my opinion, this probably might be the best card in the format. It has to be Ice Dragon's Prison. If you haven't picked this one up yet, it's gonna be rough because there's really nothing that replaces this card. Let me explain why this card is so good. You take a monster in your opponent's graveyard, you target it for cost, you special summon it to your field. So essentially, if they do something like they use Altergeist Manifestation, this is really a rogue thing, or I'm trying to think of something more relevant. Let's say like Eldritch, right? If they use one of the Eldritch effects, you just Ice Dragon's Prison. Now you yeeted the Eldritch effect because they're not going to be able to summon that same Eldritch because it has to target that Eldritch in the graveyard. You take the Eldritch. Now you have your own Eldritch on your field. Then after all that, you can banish one monster from both players' fields that have the same type as each other. So if they already have an Eldritch on their side of the field, you revive the Eldritch once they're using the effect, once they're committed to using the effect, then you banish both Eldritch monsters on the field, and they really can't do much about it. And also, you can still attack on the same turn you revive a card, so sometimes you can just attack with your monsters, and then still during battle phase, flip Ice Dragon's Prison, summon your opponent's monster back, attack for game. This card just has so many applications, and there really isn't some sort of substitution for it, because it just does so many things in a trap. So many things. Let me give you guys some more examples that are relevant. If your opponent plays Chakanine and they revive their Dryden, you can flip Ice Dragon's Prison, grab their Dryden, now banish both the Dryden and their Chakanine, and they're out of a play unless they open up another barrage, or if they have like Living Fossil or something. But even then, there's no real way for that deck to recycle Dryden from the banish pile. So that's very something to keep in mind. And also, another application is your opponent summons Oviraptor. Oviraptor grabbing Miscellaneous Source, okay? Then use Miscellaneous Source effect to discard from hands to the graveyard for cost. Since that is cost, in the same chain link, you're going to flip Ice Dragon's Prison, revive their Miscellaneous Source, then banish both Miss and Oviraptor. Now they're out of both of those cards. And they're going to be stuck. Most of the time, they're going to be stuck. So it's just a really good card. It just really sucks that it's really expensive, but what can you do? Maybe it'll go down at the time of recording this video, but right now it's pretty pricey, just a heads up. That's probably the most expensive thing on this list. And last but not least, Torrential Tribute. Now let me explain why this is so good, okay? Zodiac Dryden can only destroy stuff that's face up. The Chuchi, the trap card in Virtual World, can only destroy the stuff that's face up. And usually if your opponent has a VFD, and you just set one pass, your opponent's gonna try to choke you out next turn and try to win, okay? And in order to do that, they have to summon more monsters. A well-timed Torrential Tribute will wipe their entire side of the field, and they can't do anything. Think about that. They can't do anything about it. And Torrential, in my opinion, is just a really, really good card. It's been slept on for a while. I mean, in the previous format, you just made a board, or you rip cards out of your opponent's hand, so it obviously wasn't nearly as good. But nowadays we're rolling back the dice, and we're going back to a more controlled format. So Torrential Tribute is a much better choice to have either in your main or your side, just depending on what deck you're playing against, obviously. But most of the time this will have application in 90% of decks, unless they're playing like just a trap heavy deck, or if your opponent just opens Harpy's Feather Dust at every game, because sometimes that does happen. Anyways, those are my top 5 anti-meta cards. I'm 100% sure I might have missed some, but if you just want to give more feedback down below, let me know if there's more cards you want me to talk about. But there are so many Yu-Gi-Oh cards out there, but in my opinion, these are the top 5 cards right now that are really, really good against the current meta here in December 2020. I am AkemiTCG. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. I will see you guys in the next one.